welcome to a brand new episode of India Election Watch, the only show that gets you clear updates and analysis. We believe there should be a premium on unbiased and uncluttered reporting. And at a time when everyone is taking sides, everyone's twisting facts, cheerleading for different parties, we bring you updates, facts, opinion, and let you decide who you should support. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. Let's tell you what happened today. Seven days to go for the world's biggest democratic exercise to kick off. The first phase of voting will be on the 11th of April. Political parties are going all out to win votes. Here is today's rally roster. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held 4 rallies today. 3 of them were in India's northeast. His last rally today was in Maharashtra. Arunachal Pradesh, West Bengal and Maharashtra send 92 MPs to the Lok Sabha in all, and they're all critical to the BJP. Party President Amit Shah was in Uttarakhand and Jammu and Kashmir. A total of 11 seats are up for grabs here. And Congress President Rahul Gandhi was also in action today. He was campaigning in Nagaland and Assam, fighting for 16 seats in total in these states. Clearly, the Northeast was the center of all the action today. Let's bring you up to speed with what happened. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Arunachal Pradesh. As I said, he chose to respond to the Congress manifesto today. As expected, it was a no-holds-barred attack. Modi said the Congress only came to serve itself.
एक तरफ इरादों वाली सरकार है, तो दूसरी तरफ सिर्फ और सिर्फ झूठे वादों वाले नामदार है। इन लोगों की तरह ही इनका घोषणा पत्र भी भ्रष्ट होता है, बेईमान होता है, डकौसलों से भरा होता है और इसलिए उसे घोषणा पत्र नहीं, डकोसला पत्र कहना चाहिए।
The Prime Minister played to his strengths. He pitted his government's track record against the Congress. He claimed that the grand old party never cared about the Northeast. Since kick-starting his campaign, Modi has been relentless in his attacks against the Congress and the Gandhi family in particular. But Rahul Gandhi so far has ignored the Prime Minister. He was in Nagaland and Assam today. The Congress president is marching to his own beat. He's hard-selling his minimum income guarantee scheme. It is at the center of his attacks against the government.
एक तरफ चौकीदार का झूठ, हर बैंक अकाउंट में 15 लाख रुपए, दूसरी तरफ कांग्रेस पार्टी का सच, हिंदुस्तान के सबसे गरीब 20% लोगों के बैंक अकाउंट में 5 साल में 3,60,000 रुपए हमारी गारंटी।
Rahul Gandhi is trying to weave his own narrative. He focused on the main themes of the Congress manifesto, but did not ignore his all-time favorite subject, that is the Rafale deal. The Congress president questioned Prime Minister Modi's track record. He promised to withdraw the Citizenship Amendment Bill if voted to power. And of course, Nyay remained at the front and center of Rahul Gandhi's speeches.
पैसा कहां से आएगा? नरेंद्र मोदी ने सवाल पूछना शुरू कर दिया। पैसा कहां से आएगा? मैं बताता हूं पैसा कहां से आएगा। मैं बताता हूं, चौकीदार को मैं बताता हूं पैसा कहां से आएगा। पैसा अनिल अंबानी जैसे लोगों के जेब से आएगा। आपने उसकी जेब में हिंदुस्तान की एयरफोर्स का 30,000 करोड़ रुपए डाला। आपने एयरफोर्स से पैसा चोरी करके उस चोर के जेब में डाला। हम वही पैसा उस चोर के जेब से निकालकर हिंदुस्तान के सबसे गरीब 20% परिवारों में जेब में डालेंगे।
Rahul Gandhi's rallies in the Northeast came under the backdrop of an alleged cash for votes scandal. This is the Congress version. They say that in the Pasighat town of Arunachal Pradesh, the BJP is paying cash to win votes. Around midnight, the local police recovered nearly 2 crore rupees in cash. This is just before the Prime Minister's rally in Pasighat today. The Congress is blaming the BJP. They claim this money was meant to influence voters. The investigation is still on. Meanwhile, the headline event of the day was in West Bengal. The battle for Bengal is heating up. The Prime Minister kicked off the BJP campaign in the state today. Challenging him was the West Bengal Chief Minister herself, Mamata Banerjee. She moved up she changed her campaign schedule by a day to take on Narendra Modi. The Prime Minister was the first to open the attack. He began by taking a dig at Mamata Banerjee, calling her a speed breaker on the road to West Bengal's development.
पश्चिम बंगाल में एक स्पीड ब्रेकर है, स्पीड ब्रेकर। इस स्पीड ब्रेकर को यहां के लोग दीदी के नाम से जानते हैं। ये दीदी आपके विकास की स्पीड ब्रेकर है।
Later in the day, the verbal battle shifted to Kolkata. The BJP had organized a mega rally at the city's massive brigade ground. And here the Prime Minister slammed the Congress and the opposition, saying their promises will divide India.
कि कांग्रेस पार्टी ने अपना एक ढकोसला पत्र जारी किया है। इस ढकोसला पत्र में कांग्रेस ने वादा किया है कि सेना का सुरक्षा कवच हटा देंगे। जो कानून आतंकी के प्रभाव वाले क्षेत्र में सेना के जवानों को मदद करता है, उसी कानून को हटा देंगे। ऐसी बात जिन्होंने 60 साल तक देश में राज किया, ऐसे लोग कर रहे हैं।
Mamata Banerjee is taking the battle head-on. Calling the Prime Minister a liar, she dared him to a debate. She questioned the BJP's record on agriculture. She claimed the farmer incomes in West Bengal rose by 3 times under her. She also went on to say that 12,000 farmers had committed suicide during the BJP's tenure at the centre.
আমি আজকে শুনছিলাম প্রধানমন্ত্রী বাবু মানে এক্সপায়ারি বাবু মানে প্রধানমন্ত্রী হিসেবে এক্সপায়ারি বাবু এবার থেকে আমি আর তাকে প্রধানমন্ত্রী বলবো না কারণ তার গভর্নমেন্টের এক্সপায়ারি হয়ে গেছে তাই আমি বলবো এক্সপায়ারি বাবু আপনি আজকে শিলিগুড়িতে বলেছেন কি বলেছেন আমাদের গভর্নমেন্ট নাকি গরিবদের জন্য কোনো কাজ করে না আপনি কি করেছেন 5 বছরে কৈফিয়ত দিন আর যদি মনে করেন আপনি যা বলেছেন সত্যি আসুন আমার সাথে বিতর্কে ডাইরেক্ট বিতর্কে আপনি কোশ্চেন করবেন আমি রিপ্লাই দেব প্রমাণ দিয়ে বলে দেব রোজ রোজ মিথ্যে কথা বলবেন না প্রধানমন্ত্রী মিথ্যে কথা বলা নয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী শিষ্টাচার চৌকিদার মিথ্যাচার নয় এটা মাথায় রাখবেন 56 ইঞ্চি ছাতি নিয়ে 560 ইঞ্চি মিথ্যে কথা বলে যাচ্ছে
Let's turn to the neighbouring state. 21 Lok Sabha seats, 147 assembly seats. That is what's up for grabs in the eastern state of Odisha. And national leaders are making a beeline to attract voters in the state because the election is just 8 days away. Assembly elections in Odisha will be held along with the Lok Sabha polls in the first 4 phases. In phase 1, on the 11th of April, polling will be held in 4 Lok Sabha constituencies and assemblies under the jurisdiction of these seats. In the second phase, voting will take place on 5 Lok Sabha constituencies and the respective assembly seats. That's on the 18th of April. The third and fourth phases will see voting on 6 seats each. Technically, by the end of March, elections will be over in Odisha. That explains why leaders are very serious about the state. Both the major national parties, the Congress and the BJP, are hoping to gain momentum. So who is leading? Is there anti-incumbency in the state of Odisha? After all, Naveen Patnaik has been the chief minister for the last 19 years here, 19. He is one of the longest serving chief ministers in India. Also, there is anti-incumbency against the Modi government. Is there anti-incumbency is the question. What are the issues on the ground here? Will there be a revival in fortunes for the Congress? The main battle is between the Biju Janata Dal of Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik and the Bharatiya Janata Party. Congress, which was once a powerful party in the state, is almost non-existent now. In fact, the BJP has gained from the 11-year-long alliance it had with Naveen Patnaik's party, the BJD. The BJP is now a major opposition party in Odisha. It even has prominent leaders like Dharmendra Pradhan, Jay Panda and Aparajita Sarangi in its ranks. Naveen Patnaik still remains the most popular leader in the state, but his party's influence has waned significantly. Let me explain all of this with numbers. In 1995, the Congress had nearly 40% of the votes. It even formed a government. Biju Janata Dal had over 35% of the vote share. The BJP came a distant third. In 2000, when Naveen Patnaik formed the government, the Congress still had more vote share, but the NDA alliance was a win-win partnership. 30% vote share of the BJD plus 18% of the BJP. That was the beginning of the alliance demolishing the Congress in Odisha. In 2004, when Congress-led UP ousted the Vajpayee government, Odisha still favoured the NDA. They got 18 seats out of 21. Same in the assembly poll, the NDA ruled. Cut to 2009, the BJD walked out of the NDA. It is from here, 2009, that the politics in the state changed significantly. What was a symbiotic alliance had turned into a political headache for Naveen Patnaik. The BJP had begun to cut his votes. He got them back. He won in 2009, again in 2014. But this is a new election. The anti-incumbency helps the BJP, and Naveen Patnaik will only need to remember what happened to the left front in West Bengal. Parties in power for a long time have often come crashing to the ground. Will that happen this time too? That is the million-dollar question. Elections in India are won on perceptions and issues. Let's get the issues out of the way first. Odisha is rich in minerals and raw materials like coal, iron ore and bauxite. Mining is the bedrock of this state's economy, but production has slowed down. Jobs growth has been lackluster. Starvation deaths are still a reality in Odisha. In a tribal state, businesses still remain with the upper castes. Rural distress, rise in violence against women, allegations of corruption have all hurt the image of the Biju Janata Dal. Next comes perception. The BJP has a clear edge here. It has wooed prominent leaders like Jay Panda. Many BJD leaders who were denied tickets in their own party have now joined the BJP. The party's campaign is full of hope and intensity. Such momentum is not with the Congress party. No such luck there. It doesn't have strong tribal leaders in a state with a majority tribal population. So Odisha will be basically a two-way contest. On the one side, we have Naveen Patnaik and his party, the BJD. On the other side, we have the BJP. For now, the Chief Minister is maintaining equal distance from both the BJP and the Congress, keeping the option of an alliance open with either. His party has a loyal base. It is likely to come on top. But Naveen Patnaik may not have a majority in the Odisha Assembly, and his Lok Sabha seat share may come down while the BJP's may rise. That, in a nutshell, is the state of Odisha. On Know Your Candidate tonight, we are profiling Mehbooba Mufti, the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. She's a two-time Member of Parliament from Anantnag, and she will fight this Lok Sabha election from the very same constituency. Let's tell you a little more about her. She's 59 years old, Mehbooba Mufti. She's the President of the Jammu and Kashmir People's Democratic Party, the PDP. She's a two-time Lok Sabha MP. She represented Anantnag in the 14th Lok Sabha from 2004 to 2009. She was re-elected to the 16th Lok Sabha in 2014, but then she resigned on the 4th of July 2016 when she took charge as the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. Here's a quick look at her performance in Parliament before that. Her attendance stands at 35% versus the national average of 80%. She's participated in 9 debates. She's asked 26 questions. Both figures are well below the national averages. Ms. Mufti has not introduced any private member bills in her 2 terms in Parliament. She comes from a political family whose history is entwined with that of modern-day Jammu and Kashmir. Her father, Mufti Mohammad Saeed, was twice the Chief Minister of the state. It was his death in 2016 that saw his daughter succeed him as the first woman Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. Mehbooba Mufti carried forward the coalition with the BJP, but it was an awkward marriage from the word go. When the BJP withdrew support in 2018, Mufti stepped down as Chief Minister. She is known for a fiery rhetoric and is often at odds with the BJP, which accuses her of fanning separatist sentiments and going soft on militancy. She has shot back at the BJP's Hindutva politics and accuses the BJP of promoting anti-minority sentiment in the country. Mehbooba Mufti will contest from Anantnag this time. Her party has purposely decided not to field candidates in 2 seats from the Jammu region to ensure that votes are not divided, and this has bolstered the chances of the NC Congress combined. Ms. Mufti put the decision down to this. She said, and I'm quoting, "We want to ensure secular forces win in the Jammu region." Frequently asked questions, FAQs. Is there no contest in Telangana this time? Is KCR still the king of Telangana? These questions are significant because just a few months ago, the state gave a rousing response to the Telangana Rashtra Samiti. KCR's party won nearly 88 seats in an assembly of 119, and the TRS, his party, got nearly half of the total votes polled. But no two elections are alike. And assembly elections and Lok Sabha elections are totally different ball games. Besides, Telangana is a young state. It was once carved out of Andhra Pradesh in 2014, and this is their first Lok Sabha election as a state. So why is there a perception that KCR has already won this battle? 1. Welfare measures like the flagship healthcare scheme, Arogyashri, has worked well with people. 2. KCR is the most charismatic leader in the state. The next best is his son, KT Ramarao. 3. KCR is seen as a leader with a rural connect. He speaks the Telangana dialect. He appeals to every voter. 4. People still consider him as the man who spearheaded the movement for a separate Telangana. They credit him for the creation of the state. And that's not all. There are significant takeaways from the recently concluded assembly elections. One of the activists who protested for Telangana's formation was Kodandaraman. His party, the TJS, allied with the Telugu Desam, the Congress and the left in the assembly election. Together they took on KCR. Their math was simple at that time. The traditional Congress voter of Telangana, plus the caste votes of Telugu Desam party, plus the rural voters of the left, and the identity votes due to TJS. Combined, they thought they could oust KCR. They came a cropper. And this explains KCR's near invincibility. The TDP's Chandrababu Naidu and the Congress will be competing against each other in Andhra Pradesh, and a few kilometers away, in neighbouring Telangana, these two parties are allies. The voter will not be fooled though. Besides, there is no strong state leader either in the Congress or the Telugu Desam. Now, in the South Indian states, with the exception of Kerala perhaps, votes on the basis of a leader's mass appeal are common. The Congress has no such face in both Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and Rahul Gandhi does not cut it in Telangana. When the Congress did well in the United Andhra Pradesh, it was due to a mass leader like the late YS Rajshekhar Reddy, also known as YSR. And after his death, the Congress has lost that vote bank. Also, the delay in bifurcation happened under the Congress rule, under UPA, and people still remember that. They do not buy the Congress line. They do not give the Congress credit for the formation of Telangana. On the other hand, KCR plays to the sentiments of the people. He knows how to win elections. The minority vote will go to him thanks to the support of Asaduddin Owaisi's party. And the majority vote is anyway his. After all, KCR is known for conducting many rituals and his belief in astrology. His son is seen as the urban icon in Telangana. So between father and son, they have all the bases covered. K. Chandrasekhar Rao has made this election a priority. He wants a prominent role in national politics. He has made many visits to meet Mamata Banerjee. He has spoken about a federal front. He has converted the Telangana fight as one between national and regional parties. And all of this is going to help him. As things stand, Telangana is all set to unanimously back K. Chandrasekhar Rao. The state has 17 seats. Anything less than 15 for KCR will be seen as a bad result. His party is in pole position and KCR is still the king of Telangana. Yesterday we told you about some big leaders who were breaking the election code, how even governors were taking partisan positions, and how the Election Commission was dragging its feet. But it wasn't always so. Today we'll tell you about cases when the EC cracked down hard, even on high-profile leaders. Now, leaders do not come as polarizing and as high-profile as the late Bal Thackeray, the founder of Shiv Sena. Did you know that he was barred from contesting election for 6 years by none other than the Election Commission? It's a different matter that he never did contest. But the message was stern. He was also barred from casting his vote. Why, when and how, you may ask? Let's take it one by one. Bal Thackeray had made an inflammatory communal speech in 1987 in Vile Parle in Mumbai. He was campaigning for a Shiv Sena candidate in an assembly by-poll. He was reprimanded by the Bombay High Court as well as the Supreme Court of India. So where did the poll panel come in? After the Supreme Court order, the Election Commission shared its opinion with the President of India in 1999 under Section 8A, subsection 3 of the Representation of People's Act. It recommended Bal Thackeray's disqualification as a candidate and disenfranchisement as a voter, meaning he will not be allowed to cast his vote. Thackeray did not challenge the order, but notice the year when the order came. It took 12 years for the Election Commission of India to take action. The Shiv Sena chief had already decided not to contest elections by then. And it wasn't just Bal Thackeray. The poll panel recommended the disqualification of the candidate too, the candidate he was campaigning for, Ramesh Yashwant Prabhu. His victory in the by-election was declared null and void 12 years later. Now you may ask why politicians seek votes in the name of a particular religion and they're allowed to go scot-free in India, because in 2016, the Supreme Court of India ruled that invoking Hindutva or Hinduism means not only the religion, but also the Indian culture. So invoking Hindutva basically is not a violation of the Model Code of Conduct. That's according to the Supreme Court of India. And that is why these leaders get to do it. There were a few politicians who escaped the wrath of the Election Commission earlier, like Digvijay Singh of the Congress party. He was leasing out buildings that were already leased out apparently, but he was not punished because the Election Commission said the case was beyond their jurisdiction. BJP's Ram Lakhan Singh Kushwaha of the 12th Lok Sabha is another case. He had got his name deleted from one assembly constituency in Madhya Pradesh. He was elected from the very same area as MP. A disqualification was demanded, but by the time the poll panel's opinion was sought, the 12th Lok Sabha itself had been dissolved, so it did not come to a decision. Former External Affairs Minister Jaswant Singh was accused of holding office of profit. Again, the poll panel said the matter was beyond its jurisdiction. Last year, the Election Commission recommended the disqualification of 21 MLAs of the Aam Aadmi Party. The reason? They were appointed as Parliament secretaries by this party. An office of profit case. It is sub judice now. And looking at all these cases, here's a question we want to ask. Is it time to have a re-look at the jurisdiction of the Election Commission? First, it cannot take 12 years to disqualify a politician for making communal speeches. And two, there needs to be a retrospective clause to allow them to take pre-election violations into consideration. 3, there needs to be clarity on issues such as office of profit. And 4, it's imperative to make the Model Code of Conduct legally tenable. If that happens, parties will be wary of the promises they make, and politicians will most certainly watch what they speak. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Election Watch. Keep your comments coming. Tweet us with the hashtag India Election Watch. Thanks very much for watching.